The Battery Buzz podcast is brought to you by H.B. Fuller Company. H.B. Fuller is one of the battery industry's leading suppliers of adhesive, encapsulant, coatings, and sealants for the EV and battery industry. Hello and welcome to Battery Buzz, the show for battery professionals by battery professionals, keeping you connected to what's new with batteries and the people that help build them. Your battery specialist hosts, myself, Elizabeth Canaz, and Jermaine Marius Oliverage, are back for our next episode. Now let's get started. Thank you for joining us. This week we are welcoming our special guest, Miss GoElectric, and we're excited to get Miss GoElectric's perspective on the battery industry.
Yeah, so Miss GoElectric, super excited to have you. She's an automotive educator with more than a decade worth of experience as a consultant, a product expert for multiple global automakers. Many in the public became familiar with her during the Charge Across America Coast to Coast EV Rally on NBC Sports Network, which is very exciting. But also since then, she's built one of the largest collections of EV and e-mobility explainers, which include in-depth product reviews online. She's also hosted e-bike rides with viewers nationwide, and hosted countless episodes of the Inside EVs podcast. So Miss GoElectric, thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to have you.
I am very excited to join you as well. Thanks for having me, ladies.
Let's begin our segment, What's New in Batteries, where we discuss some of the most recent news happening in the EV and battery world. So Volvo is lining up or living up to its promise it made last year when it announced the end of production of vehicles powered by diesel engines. It was supposed to end in early 2024. So this XC90 assembly at the company's Torslanda factory is the final oil burner produced by the Swedish automaker. It's ending an era that started over 45 years ago. So the blue SUV, the final one, won't be heading to a customer since it'll go into a museum, which I think is really interesting because it's 45 years of technology that now has ended for this major auto manufacturer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just goes to show how serious, we're taking this. I mean, that's a huge decision to make, but very exciting.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to consider Volvo as one of the early auto manufacturers that has committed to going electric, and they will have their passenger vehicles become 100% electric by 2030. And it looks like, based on this type of news, that they are tracking towards, as you just said, living up to those expectations and the goals that they are setting. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, diesel isn't really as prominent in the US market, but this is really important for the European market, considering that not a lot of people are continuing to purchase diesel vehicles in the European market. I saw a statistic that was like, since 2015, the market share for diesel in the European market was about 50%,
Oh, wow.
whereas just this past year, it was 15%. So it just shows the take rate is going down anyway. They don't need to really invest in research and development in that technology. And to be fair, with gasoline engines as well, have we really seen major progress in that field? I mean, the maintenance of that technology has been consistent over the years, and maybe they've eked out a little bit more fuel economy increases over the period of time that it's been in existence. But generally speaking, I think they understand that the future is electric, and they're seeing that with the market share increase for electric vehicles, not only in Europe, but also with Volvo's parent company being Chinese, Geely. They're one of the largest automakers in the Chinese market, and they've gone all electric for the most part, and especially with the Volvo brand having a presence in the United States, building some of their future EVs in North America, so they'll be able to get some of those subsidies from the federal government, I think just is showing that the EV is the way to go, and that is the future, and they need to invest in that technology and get better in that technology.
Yeah, and I know they've done some investments recently by acquiring Proterra, in the US. So they're going to be
Yes.
making their own batteries, and now they have the technology to do that. So it's that you can see them making the steps to get closer and closer.
Yeah, and to that point,
Yeah.
it's really exciting in their truck divisions when you think of, because a lot of people still think that that is not an application where it's necessarily going to work to have an electric vehicle in the heavy duty area, those higher class semi trucks. But Volvo has had a product out for years in the truck division to be able to supply their customers that type of technology. And they're also making those acquisitions in order to continue to, you know, exceed expectations in that area. So I'm excited to see them. They're taking the reins. I mean, they're one of those automakers that I was surprised how early they announced they were going all electric, and they're sticking to their guns.
That's awesome.
Yeah, good for them. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I think that talking about the North America adoption of EVs is super important. I love that conversation. And I guess, you can't really talk about that without talking about the big three and kind of where they're at. And so one of the interesting things is with Ford, with how they're doing, right, with their electric vehicle sales. And so I was interested and I guess not really expected, but their sales increased about 86%, with over 20,000 EVs sold in the first quarter of 2024, which I think is great. And another interesting fact, the F-150 Lightning, right? It's still the America's best-selling electric pickup, and it actually is still topping the Rivian's R1T. And then the Mach-E, which I see everywhere, maybe just as often as Tesla's on the road, right? But you can kind of tell, I think year over year, it was a 77% increase with almost 10,000 Mach-E's sold, and they're the second best EV SUV, I think, behind the Model Y. So, you know, maybe we don't really see kind of the big three adoption going as fast as maybe Volvo or Tesla or Rivian, but it's definitely happening. And so those numbers were pretty surprising to me, but in a good way.
Yeah, especially considering they ended their production early on the electric vehicles for Ford. They had some bumps in the road. And so, I mean, I was really surprised to see those numbers as well.
It's very encouraging. I think that this, we kind of touched on it a little bit in the last topic, but the incentives that are offered by our federal government for companies to invest in manufacturing here, and specifically for electric vehicles, because they get, subsidies on the batteries that they manufacture here in the United States. And to be fair, they almost kind of need this help from the government because they have so much invested, billions of dollars invested in the old technology of internal combustion engines. And, that's supposed to span out for a long period of time for them to recoup those investments. And to now all of a sudden just switch up to a new technology and say, here you go, try to compete with the ones that are only
Right.
making EVs is a very big challenge for them, especially considering most of their profits come from the other technology. So for them to not only take their two iconic nameplates, the F-150 and the Mustang, and turn them into electric vehicles, there are only two products that they have right now that are mass market electric vehicles for sale, and they're already doing this well. I can't
Yeah.
imagine what it's going to be like in the coming years when they start to come out with electric vehicles in each one of the categories that they offer, whether that's an even smaller SUV or a larger three-row SUV, which we recently heard was delayed, unfortunately, to prioritize more affordable mass market compact EV. But I think, generally speaking, Ford is one of those that is on the right track, in the right direction. And once they get their footing in developing the technology with specifically batteries, I mean, they make great products right now, but there are a couple things that they can improve, like incorporating a heat pump, which they started to do with the F-150 Lightning to improve range, especially for people that live in communities like mine in Michigan, where we get really harsh winters and we need those more efficient heating technologies in our vehicles to make sure we can maximize range. But I think that they're slowly but surely going in the right direction, and they understand under Jim Farley's leadership what they need to do in order to compete in the EV space. And they understand that Tesla is their main threat, because let's be fair, the Tesla Model Y is the best-selling vehicle on the globe, period. And to say that is an EV for one, but also an American EV is really a proud moment, I think, for people in the car business, and they should be recognizing, because that is an incredible feat to become the best selling overall.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely amazing, and rooting for all these companies to succeed. That's what we want to see.
Hmm.
So one thing that's really interesting is I saw in the news is Archer, an eVTOL company. They completed their multiple battery pack drop tests. And so this is one of the most challenging tests you can face as part of the FAA certification program. So Midnight's battery packs were dropped at 50 feet at 100%, 30%, and 0% state of charge, which is a hard test to pass. And they did this at the National Institute for Aviation Research to simulate extreme impact scenarios. So the most impressive thing is not only did these batteries pass the drop test, but they were still functioning after the test. So it kind of validates the safety and durability of Archer's proprietary battery pack design, which I think is exciting. I'm really rooting for these eVTOL companies that are promising, shorter airport drives, especially for somebody who lives in, the San Francisco Bay Area where traffic is
Yeah.
is a challenge sometimes. So I'm really rooting for them to get certified, and it's like we're finally getting into the Jetson age.
Yeah. Yeah.
It honestly feels like that. I mean, it's so exciting to see these new forms of transportation evolve, which makes sense for the application of electrification. And I think that the eVTOL business is probably the sleeper amongst all of them, because to be able to, like you said, regionally hop in instead of sitting in traffic in some of the most busy, most congested areas in the world, and to just make those quick trips and be able to charge in between while you're laying over to pick up a new crew is a new fleet of passengers, I should say, is just I think going to be a game changer for the business and for most people. I mean, and you can say the same about autonomous technology, is changing the habits of how people travel and get to work in a means that is a lot less stressful and statistically safer. And I think when you talk about these drop tests, even in the car business, a lot of people consider EVs, they think that they're unsafe. There's a lot of myths about how, they can catch fire and things like this. They think that they always catch fire, but statistically, internal combustion engines not only catch fire more often, but they also explode. And the fact that Archer can prove something like this in a battery drop test at different states of charge and still be a viable option to keep it running is
Yeah.
just, also the regulations of the FAA and the means of safety that they find so important, I think is something that people don't quite understand. And that's why they don't think eVTOLs are a viable option. But it's really exciting to see electrification change even the aviation industry.
Yeah, it's truly it's challenging for them. I mean, they have to face not only, the battery requirements, but then the FAA requirements, which is a whole nother stringent thing. So I
Yeah.
think they're getting really close, and I will definitely ride one from my house to the
Oh, yeah.
airport.
Yeah. Well, and
You're
I
a
think
prime
it's cool.
candidate.
Yeah, yeah, you definitely are. But yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, I think they're committing that it would still be in line price-wise with, a typical rideshare fare, so it's would be entering the market as a very affordable option still for, the community, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and when people think about air travel, one of the largest costs associated with, other than storing it somewhere, is, fueling it. And the fact that recharging is a lot more affordable than what we would put in fuel for these aviation, whether it's a plane or it's a helicopter or whatever, it's way more affordable to charge up even at higher places of rate of your cost for your electricity, like in San Francisco or places in California, it's much more affordable and attainable for people, so they'll be able to get those costs down for being able to charge it efficiently. And the other thing is, I think a lot of people don't realize how many automakers have put money into these electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, because they also want to see more options for mobility and be able to leverage their manufacturing prowess or their technology and implement those in different means of transportation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they've got some big
definitely.
names behind them for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a great discussion, ladies. So Miss GoElectric, we'd like to get maybe some more insight from you and your perspective on the EV industry, and maybe share some, like how women entering the EV space can prepare themselves for success, and what you've seen and how you've become successful.
Well, I think what's important is that you have to really find your passion and figure out what interests you the most and follow that direction. And for me, it was EVs, and then developing your expertise. And I think that that's really what we should focus on as women in order to command the respect I think that we deserve and that we can command in the space. Because if you develop an expertise in a specific area, in my case with EVs, I do talk about the industry in itself and where it looks on a global perspective, and also having the experience to be inside many automakers to see exactly how things operate and exploring those avenues and being more curious about how things work, I think only help develop your expertise and your knowledge base that you can share with others, and then just going out and proving it. I know a lot of times people will assume that, just because I'm a woman in the automotive business, maybe I don't know anything about cars, or that I'm not passionate about cars, or even being in the EV business, there's a lot of people that think that I don't appreciate even like classic cars or internal combustion engine vehicles. But I think there's a line where you need to respect across the board where the technology has come from and where it's going, and realize what the future is and go after it, be a part of it. Because in my opinion, there's nothing more exciting than that. And if you can find your passion and continue to follow it in that direction, I think you're going to be in really good shape.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. And there's so much information to educate yourself in whatever area you choose, but especially specifically for, EV batteries, online, I mean, is a great tool that I've utilized. And I always joke that I have a PhD in Google.
Yeah,
That's my line.
Yeah, I love,
absolutely.
yeah, but no, I think you guys are absolutely right. But I want to say, like, if people, like you both who have kind of been in the industry and, are out and kind of speaking, to me, also being able to kind of work with Elizabeth and a lot of my other colleagues as well, I just seeing more women in these spaces where they're passionate and they're being able to educate and be out there, it just really kind of fuels my passion and
I
gets
think
me excited.
I think that's an amazing point, because if you can find other women that are in your sector, grab hold of them tight and
Yeah.
don't let go, because they're hard to find, but also it's just inspiring to learn from others that are in the business, and maybe they're in a slightly separate division than you, but still there's a lot to learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I guess going into like what do you see as near-term advancements with accelerated EV adoption and that will drive the industry significantly, like in your opinion?
So I'm very excited for the development of battery technology. I think that, as we kind of touched on a little bit earlier with some of the news stories, is that there's a lot of opportunity for car companies to learn how to become more efficient. And I'm always talking about this on my channel and through different means of communication around electric vehicles, is that efficiency is so important. Because if we are building batteries, that's very cost intensive for manufacturing and putting those in vehicles that ultimately the consumer will drive. And the consumer doesn't typically know any better for as far as like the general average consumer. Me, I'm a little bit more nerdy, so I pay attention to that. But the size of the battery is maybe not as much as important to them as how much range it provides. So I think that if automakers can really focus on making basically a battery cell have more opportunity to provide more range and become more efficient and use less of those materials in the battery packs, then it's a win-win for everyone because we get the cost down even further for the prices for EVs as a whole. And that's good for the manufacturer and it's good for the customer. So ultimately, I hope that that technology continues to improve, and that can be using different chemistries, that can be using different components that help with the battery management and where all the energy is going, or like the heat pump, as I was talking about before, when you are heating the cabin to try to make it more less energy intensive and more efficient. So that's my hope, is that everyone's coming around to their next generations of EVs that they're producing, and they're going to start incorporating more of that technology. We're already seeing it. Of course, Tesla is the leader in this space, but Hyundai is also taking it by the reins, and they are really proving to make incredible vehicles that have very efficient powertrains.
Yeah, definitely. We're starting to see that trend. And I think just, being able to manufacture locally because of the government incentives is really helping push that. So I think that'll help reduce costs, hopefully, not having to shift things from, across the ocean to the United States. So I
Yep.
think that's a significant trend that I'm very hopeful about.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think, you kind of touched on this kind of within our conversation to this point. And I'd say the reasons to go electric, right, are, and the benefits really can't be understated. But I'm just curious, what are some of the reasons that you personally are, why you would care about the EV adoption, and kind of what are the main factors there that make you see it as such a great benefit for everyone?
Well, for me, actually, the reason why I went electric is a little bit different probably from a lot of the early adopters. And that's because, I thought the technology was absolutely incredible and interesting once I got to experience it, and more of what felt like an ownership experience. Back in the day, I had launched for BMW the i3, and I totally fell in love with that car and was like, why isn't anybody like this is amazing. This car is so much fun. And I thought at that time, like this is the future, and I want to be a part of this future. But I actually switched to electric because for me, having the type of job I do in working with different OEMs and traveling across the country to educate consumers or their dealer partners or their agency partners, it was really important for me to have a vehicle that if I could leave for maybe 2 or 3 months, like my typical contracts are, and come back and not have to worry about, doing an oil change or any kind of repairs from my car sitting for so long. um, wow, that would be a dream come true. That sounds really like a magical dream. So I actually went electric. That was one of the main reasons, was because I kept having to come back and fix my car and have to deal with all these sorts of complex maintenance issues. And I didn't want to have to deal with that anymore. The other motivator was the total cost of ownership. So the fact that although maybe the MSRP was a little bit more expensive for purchasing my EV, the operational cost was significantly less because, I don't have to replace brake pads as often because of the regenerative braking systems, or, it's just a simple machine. So I don't have nearly as many parts as I have in an internal combustion engine. Of course, I don't have to do any oil changes. I don't have to do any kind of maintenance of that sort. So really only the thing that I was concerned about was tires. And that's in any car, but for hopefully a longer period of time that I would have to wait to deal with anything like that. So that was another consideration, is that, it only costs for my first EV under $10 to completely fill it up and get 300 miles of range. And my next EV, like $9 to do the same. And Now, my current EV, I have a pickup truck that's electric. It's a little bit bigger capacity for the battery, so it's $15, but that is 410 miles of range, and that's great costs as far as I'm concerned with owning a vehicle with the lifestyle that I have. But I think you also can't deny the fact that it is good for the environment. I've gotten used to living with an EV for many, many years, and just the lifestyle of just plugging it in when I go home and not having to ever go to a gas station again, and having the benefits of clean air and being able to remotely start my vehicle in an enclosed area without having to worry about like carbon monoxide poisoning or anything like that. It's just one of those uh, added environmental benefits to me that I think will never go away, that benefits everyone. And I think more people should prioritize. But I do understand that most Americans prioritize costs and the convenience of things. And we're getting closer to that being a reality in the EV space with the costs of vehicles going down. A lot of incentives, of course, not only from the federal standpoint, but also from the manufacturers themselves. At this stage, since the beginning of the year, seems like everyone's been offering discounts in order to get people into their EVs. So I think this is going to become a high increase over the next couple years and people adopting EVs because of that.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of car manufacturers, especially in the news, saying they're cutting the cost of their sales or cutting the amount of the cost of cars just to get people to buy more. So, yeah,
Mhm.
hopefully it's less barrier of entry for people who are on the fence to
Right.
adopt EVs.
Especially considering interest rates are so high for all cars right now. It's hard
Yeah.
for the whole automotive business. So it's not just EVs, and I think that's important to realize. But if you can offer those incentives to get around those big interest rates, then people are going to go electric.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really exciting. So, what are some resources, that you think our viewers can use to keep up with the industry, or if they want to learn more, what would you recommend for our viewers?
Well, I definitely use a lot of different news sources and read a lot. And it does take a lot of time, but it is something that I'm really passionate about. So, any kind of specific EV news site is important. If you don't want to spend time reading a bunch of publications, though, luckily, I have a new series called The Current, which talks about weekly EV news. So, I cover everything that's going on in the business in a 10-minute format so that you can get caught up on everything in a short period of time. But also, I think listening to podcasts like this and others that I've been associated with in the past inside EVs or things like that are really important to keep updated in the business.
So we can use you for our news, what's new in battery industry. We can
That's right.
we'll just have a link to the current in there.
Yeah, I love the
Yes.
format of it. Yeah, I love how digestible it is, and it's so easy to get a lot of information in a quick period of time that you kind of understand and can process. So it's great.
Oh, well, thank you. I that's actually the direct aim because I know a lot of people, there's a lot of different sources for EV news, but a lot of them are in a long form content. And people have been telling me over the years, like, we want something that is just quick and easily digestible. We're busy, but we want to know, let me wake up on Sunday morning and put the current on, and I'll get my 10 minutes of what happened throughout the week so I can be up to date. And yeah, we talk not only about the car business, but battery. Updates and things like the eVTOLs, anything that is electric, I try to cover, especially with the most pressing news. And charging infrastructure is also a big one for us.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we appreciate you putting that out there and helping educate, the world about what's going on. So thank you for starting that.
Well, I appreciate anyone that watches because I'm glad other people share the same passion as me because otherwise I'd just be talking to myself.
Yeah, I definitely subscribed and following. So I'll check
Thank
out your
you.
next week's as well. So are you going to be like talking anywhere? Do you have any events that you have going on coming up?
Yes, we do have a lot going on. And actually, the most recent thing that we have coming up is we are going to be heading to the Electrify Expo. And I think that's also another good opportunity to learn about things going on in the EV business, is to go to events like this. So if you haven't heard of Electrify Expo, basically it is this massive festival and it is in many cities across the country. But the one that I'm attending is in Long Beach, California, coming up at the end of May. And I'll be speaking on their industry day on a panel talking about EV charging. And so that specifically, if you want to attend that event, the public is more than welcome to buy tickets for that. There's going to be a lot of industry experts there, and I'll be on one of those panels. And then I'll also be attending the expo. The expo has everything you can imagine EV. So they do demos on electric vehicles for test drives. They do scooters, motorcycles, skateboards, e-bikes. Literally, it's just like I consider it such a magical place because it's like heaven on earth if you like EVs. And so I'm going to be going around there and exploring everything that they have on offer. I did go last year, and I was also part of a networking panel there during that time. And so if you can't make it out to this particular location at the end of May, you can check out the video that I had posted on my channel on Miss GoElectric to get a kind of see the scale of what is really going on there, because it is incredibly impressive. But if you like electrification, there's no doubt you'll like an event like this.
Well, that's exciting. So everybody
sounds
check
fun.
out Miss GoElectric. And do you know what day the panel is?
It's at the end of May. I believe maybe it's May 29th. I'll have to double check that though.
Okay. We can put that at the end of our podcast and let them know once we have the date nailed down, so they'll be able to look it up and if they want to attend.
Okay, great.
Awesome. So let's get into our next segment. We like to call Battery Banter, where we like to discuss, what's going on in the battery industry and get, our opinions or insights from what we've heard. So this month's our topic is autonomous driving adoption, and we can start a conversation on where we are now and what do we see, where do we see this going in the future. So any comments or opinions here from anybody? I know. So there's a couple things going on that I've seen, especially for the Bay Area. I know that there was a company that was trialing some cars. It was specifically Waymo, and there was an incident that occurred where a car driven by a human would hit a person, and then the Waymo car had to react to that. And I feel like maybe the media portrayed the Waymo car as the perpetrator here, and they didn't really highlight that there was an incident prior to this that occurred. And so I know in San Francisco they did burn down a car that was driving autonomously in the area. So there was some backlash of that, but there's also good things going on, like Zoox, is launching a new fleet of cars in Las Vegas, which I think is super exciting. So there's some pros and cons that we have in the public's opinions. So
Yeah, that's for sure.
safety.
I did hear about Cruise, which is partially owned by General Motors, if not fully owned by General Motors. But Cruise had some incidents, and actually this past year I had an experience in a Cruise autonomous Bolt EV, and it was, to be fair, it was not a good experience, unfortunately. And it was not it got me into a situation where it was stuck in the middle of the road for a solid like 5 to 10 minutes, and it couldn't figure out how to get out of this situation, amongst other things. But I actually also in the same trip experienced the Waymo, and the Waymo was incredible. I was so shocked by how amazing that worked. And it what was interesting in comparison to the Cruise was it was a lot more confident in everything and showing the visualization of everything around you. So whether that was cars parked or pedestrians walking or bicyclists, and a lot of really odd things happening. As you can imagine, San Francisco is a crazy busy city, so there's a lot going on at all times. And the way it handled not only getting us to the destination, but then realizing that we were going to a restaurant and it couldn't park out front because there were cars there. It took the street right before the restaurant and pulled off to the side in a spot that was perfect for it to be able to get us out safely. And I rode in a Waymo several times on that trip, and I just was enamored by the fact that it was so accurate and confidence inspiring that I was like, wow, this is the future. Like, I'm very excited about this. And then having a different experience in the cruise was, I actually tried that out first and was like, I don't know about this. So it is going to take a lot of work for people to develop the confidence in trusting the technology, but I think that certain companies are on the right track. And we've seen recently in the news, Tesla announced their latest V12 deployment, which has the neural net capability. So it's basically a hive mind where it's learning a bunch of information on every single mile that's driven across the country while FSD is on. And it's able to act very similar to how a normal human driver would react, but also statistically provide safer results. And I think that's something, of course, that people are going to be concerned about is having, crashes or having it make decisions that maybe necessarily the human wouldn't make. But I think that in the long run, it's going to be much safer and we're going to have a lot less deaths on highways and distractions from people being on their cell phones and getting in crashes in that regard than what the technology will provide. So I'm super excited about autonomous driving, and I think it only makes sense to implement in electric vehicles because typically we see these EVs are software defined, and there's a lot of capabilities that we can incorporate with autonomous driving that makes sense in deploying them in an EV. So I'm sold after I went into Waymo.
That's awesome. I want to go in a Waymo now.
You have to try it. You have to try it. I encourage everyone. I was just so shocked and surprised how amazing it performed. And a lot of companies are doing it. It's not just Waymo. Hyundai has their own division, Emotional, that they're doing also trial runs in Las Vegas. And of course, Cruise, they had to shut down after that incident for a little while, but they're starting to revamp and take the initiative to bring it back to market in a more safe way. So I think it's exciting to see a lot of people put the money into it. And even car companies like Mercedes-Benz, who's at level 3 autonomy in some places where they can allow the vehicle to drive itself while you're in the vehicle, take your hands off the wheel and not have to look out the windshield to be aware is incredible. I've experienced in some of my reviews where I've tried, say, Blue Cruise from Ford or Pro Pilot Assist 2.0 from Nissan, which allows you to take your hands off the steering wheel and it allows it to drive down the highway for you. You do have to make sure that you're looking forward and stay, because it has driver monitoring to look where your eyes are tracking to make sure you're keeping an eye on the road. But even those technologies, I'm like, wow, the fatigue is a lot less harsh in this situation than it would be me paying attention on a long road trip. And I do a lot of long road trips. I mean, one of them was the Charge Across America rally where I went from New York to LA in an EV on the TV show, but also, in my life, that's how I work is I drive long distances. I drive my EVs from where I live in Michigan to New York to California to Colorado to Nashville to Florida. I go all over the place. I put a lot of miles on. So it's one of those where I would very much appreciate more autonomous driving systems to make those drives more pleasant.
Yeah, and I think even in like areas that are highly, populated, having long commutes to work every day, if you could,
Yes.
get some of your emails in and, you less stress, better mental health overall, and maybe less road rage that cause
Yeah,
a lot of the, so maybe an overall more peaceful society because of autonomous driving, perhaps.
exactly. Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think it's not going anywhere and it seems very exciting. I think it's just kind of the initial cost and kind of the significant investments in kind of making sure that at first it's compatible with dealing with, humans and AI and, the autonomous driving, that mesh kind of I think is where there's where we kind of see the most issues. But I think once we get past that and you develop the infrastructure and the regulations and whatnot, I think it'll be very interesting and very cool to see and become normalized.
Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah,
mean
for sure.
the downside I can see maybe possibly is, um, the loss of jobs. So, taxi drivers and those kind of, ride shares. So I can see that maybe becoming an issue, for those people's in that occupation, in the short term. But I think that, having, more accessible, rides, because I know me and Jermaine were talking earlier this week and she was or last week and she was saying that a lot of the rideshare companies are leaving Minnesota, and so that's unfortunate. But then, there's some people, like the elderly or disabled that depend on these, different, rideshare companies. It makes it easier for them than having to get to perhaps a bus stop, or a train station, or getting to that bus stop or that train station. So I think that, you know, that it's critical to helping, people in different situations, become more independent and be able to move
Yeah,
about more freely.
that's a great point. And also, I think another thing to consider is that autonomy opens up a lot more revenue streams at the same time. So maybe I think there will be a shift, as you're mentioning, with people, maybe not ride sharing anymore, but then they purchase an asset that can perform the ride sharing for them so that they can be doing something else while they're making money and their car is out taking people for rides and you're collecting a little bit of that back and you're
That's a
doing something
great
else that makes
point.
you
I
money.
hadn't thought about
So
that.
it's a great opportunity for, I think, the asset to do work while you're also doing work. So you're kind of double dipping
True.
at that point. And I hope to see more of a marketplace that allows people to, make that kind of money back instead of completely losing out on, the potential of having a ride share of their own.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, but yeah, I think bottom line, it for sure is coming. I think it is why is
Hmm.
we can kind of hammer out the reliability with the technology, right? So more Waymos and less of the cruises, and
Yes,
kind of standardize it and make sure it's a great experience. I think it should be really exciting.
I think so too.
Well, great. Miss GoElectric, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come and talk with us. The insight that you have with the industries, from kind of more so like the day to day, what global makers are thinking about with their designs, and but also kind of getting the different perspective, right, of the actual trends and what we need and why we need it. Looking at some of like what you were talking about with the short term needs, like the heat pump example with the when we were talking about the lightning, I think is a great example. Is kind of I think we're seeing the electric space kind of really starting to cater to the everyday people who need it's I think less now, kind of more so for having an electric vehicle for the fun of it, and but now it's more so about the functionality and for, people, like you said, taking it for road trips or just their everyday commutes. So it's really exciting. And we want to say thank you so much for kind of your insight. Is there anything else you kind of want to touch on or any
No,
last
it's just
words?
been great to join two other women in the battery business. So I've been, really happy to join the two of you and to meet you and to talk to you about this kind of stuff. It's important that the industry evolves, and it's exciting to see you two being involved in it as well. Just that if anyone that's watching is curious and following my journey or following the current or anything else that's going on over here at Miss GoElectric, they can subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Miss GoElectric, or anywhere on social media. You can find me if you just type in Miss GoElectric. So I look forward to more discussions like this in the future and getting more into the weeds of batteries with you all again.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
you're
been
welcome
really
back
fun.
anytime.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. But
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
thank you. And so with that, I just want to say this is all the time that we have. So, thank you to Miss GoElectric. Thank you to everyone for joining us. You can join us again next month for another episode of the Battery Buzz podcast. We'll be having another special guest, Adam Harris, from Seatherm. And so that should be very exciting. He's going to join us to discuss kind of their take on the battery industry.
So please subscribe, like, follow, and check out our electric vehicle battery adhesives page on LinkedIn. And also check out Miss GoElectric weekly news series called The Current. And until next time.
Thank you.